Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I have got my good longtime friend John Greaves with me with Next Step Sales Management. We're going to be talking about something that is so cool. You guys are going to love this like crazy, but before we get started, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. John, welcome. Let's start with a little bit of about who you are. We've known each other for, I don't know, more than 10 years, I'm thinking.
Oh, yeah.
And who you are and what Next Step Sales Management does. And then we're going to jump into this cool, amazing, wonderful practice studio that's focused on sales.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I am John Greaves. I'm the president and owner of Next Step Sales Management. We are a senior living focused sales management coaching training company. We have been in business for just shy of 20 years. I've been the owner for the last 4, and it has been a really fun ride. So we serve portfolios all over the United States, generally, in a wide range of sizes. But we're a senior living focused organization.
Cool. And you have a brand new practice studio for salespeople. And before we actually get into the tool itself, I'd like to talk a little bit about why this is so important, why it's so necessary.
Yeah, this has been an area that has been a struggle for us for years and years. The idea that if you look at learning a skill, becoming proficient at anything, it often follows the edge progression. Someone explains it to you, someone maybe even demonstrates it to you, but then you enter a phase of guided practice. It's based on your decision to try to learn something. So you get guided practice, and that's usually practice with feedback and multiple iterations. As you get better, then you can move into actually doing it for experience. So explain, demonstrate, guided practice, experience. That's the EDGE method. And we've always been solid at explaining to our trainees and the people we're coaching what we would expect. And we can even demonstrate in a lot of cases, but guided practice has always been a sticking point because it's very resource intensive. It requires you to have an expert within your organization or outside of your organization to take their time to listen to your practice session, to give you feedback, but also in a way that's not really gonna turn you off or make you feel like you're being picked on. Guided practice has always been tough. So, yeah.
Yeah, and well, the other thing I was going to say is what my experience is in talking to salespeople in senior living and other arenas is that mostly they get their practice by working on real life prospects, right? Which is fine if it works, but not very good if you blow it.
It is beastly expensive to get a person to show up on the phone or online or at your community. It is really expensive to get that inquiry. And it is even more expensive to take a swing and blow it because you just simply hadn't prepared. And I think a year from now, any organization is going to be asking itself, why on earth are we still practicing on prospects? If we could practice in a practice studio, get our swings in there, get ready and qualified with our messaging, with our curiosity, with our candor. If we can get that done in a practice environment, that really puts us in the best position to take advantage of every marketing dollar and every lead that we're paying for.
Well, I think back to many, I used to be a volunteer ski patroller. And the training is sort of an EMT level 1 training. And it's essentially the same thing you talk about. You read a book, you have a certain knowledge base, then you have to learn these skills. And a big part of the skills is figuring out what's wrong with somebody when you come on them on a mountain and then treating them. And so they teach you this, they teach you how to do the assessment, and you practice it in the classroom with people. And then they actually take you out onto the mountain, typically when it's done right, and they set up these practice scenarios. And I didn't know this at the time when I was taking it, but one of the ones they always set up is a fake patient who's got an obvious injury and a non-obvious life-threatening injury. And virtually everybody kills their practice resident. And they do that because it's not the real thing. It's the same reason why physicians start with cadavers, right? I mean, it sounds sort of a weird, morbid way to look at it, but it's really the same thing. And you've solved this problem, right?
Yeah, we are now taking advantage of generative AI tools to stand in for your prospect. And then that could be an influencer. It could be the prospect themselves. It could be perhaps one of your reciprocal referral partners that you wish to build a relationship with. We have the ability now to structure the kinds of conversations we expect from sales counselors, but to offer an objective, controlled training environment, kind of like a professional baseball player when they go into the batting cage to take their swings. They can dial in the way the ball is coming across the plate. They can dial up and down the speed. They can dial up and down the placement in order to make sure they're getting their swing just right. We can do the same thing in our practice studio now. You can choose who you wish to speak to. You can choose how you want them to show up, their mood. And of course, you can take the kind of conversation and determine what that is too. Whether it's a short form conversation like an inquiry that you wish to activate, or perhaps a database dial that you wish to resurrect, or perhaps just simply leaving a voice message for someone who's given you an e-lead. All of those can be monitored, measured, and given some really good actionable feedback. And really, that's where the magic happens. Guided practice really only works if someone is listening to what you're saying and then giving you real objective advice about what you could do a little differently. In our kid's situation, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So is this a better solution? It's obviously different, but is it a better solution, a worse solution than doing one-on-one role playing?
So I'll just tell you a quick story. As I got familiar with this system and I was configuring it for senior living, I was doing a practice session and my coffee hadn't kicked in yet. And I stumbled right out of the gate on something that should have been easy. Something for me, I'm a trainer. I know this stuff. I wrote the rubric for scoring it and I messed it up. And I had this little internal conversation with myself in that flash. And it was just like, come on, man, you're a professional. You can do this. Just get through the exercise. It'll be fine. And I continued on with the exercise and I got the scoring back. But the report said, hey, John, you did fine on this. You did fine on this. The vocal analysis, however, showed contempt, anger, and frustration as the first three elements on the vocal analysis. And that's paying attention to not what the words are coming out, but what's going on with how you're showing up in your voice. And it was a complete blind spot. I had no idea that my frustration with myself was coming through in my voice. So it was a blind spot that if I had been doing a role play with a friend of mine, perhaps a regional sales manager, there's no way on earth they would have been able to pick up on that subtlety and reveal that blind spot. So this is a system that isn't dependent on your feelings. It isn't dependent on whether you show up at 9 o'clock for coffee together. It's going to give you objective feedback, and it's just going to say, hey, here's what we're hearing. This is something you may want to look at. So it's not designed to be easy.
Well, the other thing that occurs to me that I really like about this so much is that it gives me as a salesperson the opportunity to try out stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I could even try something super outrageous that I think might work. And and I'm not going to embarrass myself. So if I've got a human trainer, they might look at me and say, Steve, what kind of an idiot are you? And I don't know, maybe your tool will say that too, but if it is, it's just a machine, right? So it just gives you a lot more flexibility, it would seem like.
I have found it, and this is again after doing this for a very, very, very long time for a living. Um, it revealed some opportunities in one of our conversation types. It's the pre-discovery introduction. It's how you show up. It's how you introduce yourself, your role, your experience, the process that's unfolding for the family in front of you. It's a really good idea to be able to explain that to them. And we have a methodology and we train it. I went ahead and did it, and it gave me some feedback around, hey, you mentioned timeline, but perhaps you want to add a specific timeline to just serve as a baseline. Just that little knob turn of that one little point, and that improved my score. But if I had just done what I've always done, I would have been okay. I was sitting around at 86, but that little adjustment got me to a 96.
And that might mean the difference between an extra close or to a year, right? I mean, the dollar value of that could be really significant.
Yeah, we've talked in sales about being a numbers game. That's really not so. It's a ratios game. Sales is about getting a few more than you otherwise would have. It's not about batting 1,000. Just like in baseball, you can lose 2 out of 3 times and still go to the Hall of Fame. So we're there to help you just tune yourself and your messaging a little bit here and there. But you can also now, as an organization, say, there is nobody on my team answering the phone for a prospect who has not already shown they can get an 80 or above on an inquiry response. There's nobody conducting a discovery conversation that hasn't already shown they can score an 80 on learning about the financial implications of this decision. So it's that ability to say, as an organization, we have a baseline. We know everybody can hit a particular level of proficiency. Now, you're always going to have outliers. You're going to have people who are just fabulous, and that's great. But our theme is, hey, get all the boats to rise up. Let's make sure we just get everybody at a particular level of performance.
So, can you, how do I ask this question? Can you make it so that it's company specific, or is it generic, or how does that work?
So there are multiple studios. The studio that any individual community or any even individual participant can enroll in, that launches in January, and that's the next step. Sales management studio. That's just a generic studio for anybody who wants to get some proficiency. That's going to come with a playbook, but that playbook is based on more industry broader assumptions. We have multiple portfolios that are in a pilot right now that will have a custom studio. And that's kind of our recommendation for a group of properties. We can build your company values in. We can build your market and your offering in. We can even put in place some forbidden words. So if any of you say the F word and the word facility comes out of your mouth, the system can say, oh, wait, I thought we were talking about independent living. So it's very, very customizable. It is very easy to set it up with your own branding. And that's what the typical portfolio is doing when they work with us.
So can we actually take maybe a quick look at the tool itself?
Absolutely. Yeah. Jada, throw it up there. Thanks. Okay. So this is just the practice studio, and we have 3 different types of conversations that we're throwing up here. Messaging mastery. These are short form conversations like the inquiry response or voicemails or your pre-discovery introduction. It's also looking at your referral source networking conversations. That's messaging mastery. Discovery, of course, is topic-based, and it's around measuring your curiosity. Not only those initial questions, but more importantly, the ones below the initial questions. Objection handling is an exercise on what's messaging around some very basic and common objections. What's interesting about this, I think, is the personas feature. We have the ability, and we have populated a group of people, all of whom have a backstory, all of whom have issues of their own that are unique to them, but they have relationships. Like Marge McGillicuddy She's your prospect, but she has two kids. Judy, who's her in-town daughter, who's running around like crazy, supporting Marge. Her logistics are really Judy's issues and time. But then you've got George, her son. He's out of town, but he's the financial POA. And George has got some very specific money questions that he's going to be asking, including whether or not you're operating a financially stable organization. And he's got some reasons for that. We also have Martin. He's a prospect with some very interesting views on how to maintain your community. He's an engineer. We have Eleanor, another prospect. Then we have three kind of strategic people. We have Alex Fernandez, who's a healthcare organization executive. So he would be on your reciprocal strategic partnerships. And then Alexis Greeley, who's a discharge planner. So she's more of a tactical referral partner, and then along with one of your competitors, Rose. And she's been in your market a very long time, but she's a little concerned about, competition and how you work with one another. So these are the personas, and we can customize any of these. If you have a particular kind of person you bump into in your markets, we can populate them. Each of them has a very significant playbook, a description of what's going on with them, what might be a secret to success. And some of them are very generic, and others have some very specific attributes. So those are the personas. The scenarios themselves, you have a series of questions that you can answer, or your supervisor, your coordinator can give you an assignment that follows a learning path. For now, let's just say we're going to do a conversation. This one's going to be an activation phone inquiry. So this is they're calling you looking for information. And in this case, it's going to be Judy. And in Judy's attitude, this is where we can make this is like dialing up the speed of the pitch in a batting scenario. If I have Judy as collaborative or curious, that might be helpful for me. But I could also make Judy impatient, indifferent, overwhelmed, rude. So if you want to make it a little harder and see how people respond to people who are being abrupt, you can help them acknowledge what they're hearing and then adjust and accommodate. And that makes it for a fun. Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So the question I have is, is it possible to be successful with somebody who's rude or impatient in the
Absolutely.
tool? Okay, so, great.
Well, think about what happens in real life. If you have someone coming to you and they're exhibiting a lot of frustration or a lot of whatever the emotion is, well, what do they need from you as a sales counselor? They need you to be curious about what's going on. They need you to read the room, acknowledge what they're seeing, and ideally they want you to accommodate them. So if I'm overwhelmed, well, perhaps your accommodation is we can break this down into a whole series of smaller, more easy to manage steps, and I'll work with you on that. Well, if you're willing to acknowledge and accommodate, guess what happens to the bot's mood? The system will shift from frustrated, overwhelmed, impatient to curious or collaborative. So that's what happens in real life. We can do it here and get that same impact.
Cool. So can we actually play it? Try a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So let's just say we have Judy, and here's the thing. I've got practice mode or I have assessment mode.
Okay.
And a couple of things I noticed this morning, Vidal, who I think is on the call today, Vidal, our developer who's developed this Salesably platform in a fabulous way. We play with the prompts. We play a little bit in this period. And what I noticed this morning when I did a couple of these is the prospect was pretty salty. They were difficult. And so we'll see how this goes. I have
great.
This is unscripted now, so we don't know what it's going to say necessarily. No. If I do this in practice mode, I have an advantage though. I have the ability to see some examples of what other people have said. There's a playbook, and it's also offering me feedback. And I can type, I can copy and paste. If I'm going to test messaging, I can do that in practice mode. For now though, let's go ahead and do this as an assessment. Let's go ahead and take a test. Now, if I'm doing this as a test, I don't get the playbook. I'm just going it's just going to be me and Judy. All right. So, oh, Vidal just popped in and says hello. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and start. This is, you're putting me on the spot, Steve. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll turn my volume up. Hopefully, the audience can hear what Judy says. Let's go.
Hi, I'm calling to get some information about your community, specifically around price and availability.
Well, I'm glad you called. This is John Greaves at Harmony Acres. May I get your name so I'm pronouncing it properly?
Judy Green, I'm curious what prompted your call today.
Yes. So, Judy, I'm interested in scheduling some time with you since you've reached out to us, and I'd like you to visit if possible. Have you been to our community before? We're at 5th and Broadway.
I haven't reached out to your community. I think there may be some confusion. What made you think I had contacted Harmony Acres?
Well, Judy, what made me think you contacted is that this phone call came in to me. I think perhaps we got some wires crossed. This is an example of what happens when you do a demonstration in front of a live audience. So, Judy, would you like to maybe spend some time and talk about your situation?
I'm not interested in discussing my situation with someone who cold called me. I need to go now. Have a good day.
Ooh, that was pretty brutal.
That was really brutal.
But that's real. That's what happens, right?
On occasion. So this obviously Vidal's on, and he's looking back at the prompt and saying, okay, this was supposed to be an incoming call. It was not an outgoing call. So what we do in a situation like that is, if I feel as if the feedback that I got in that moment, I can go to the report that pops up, and I can offer a comment back to the system. And that's one of those areas where we have about 40 users using this right now, and we're getting comments back to make sure that everything is dialed in. This is the wonder and glory of modern technology.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, I mean, I think that I know this is probably a little embarrassing for you to do that way, and I get that, but I think it's actually two things that I think are super important here that I would add as commentary. The first is that it's a reminder that AI isn't perfect, and that you always have to back things up with humanity. And the second thing is that you haven't rolled this out until January, because you are in the process of debugging those kinds of things. And the third thing is that the truth of the matter is that in reality, and you know this better than I do because you're training people every day, is that from time to time, you get into these situations where things just go haywire. And it's sort of a good lesson of, okay, I got to pick up my pieces and go out and do the next one.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, you can do several database dials right in a row, and what can happen on there is the vocal analyzer will pop up and say, hey, in that last call, we're noticing some tired or some boredom, and you want to pay attention to the idea of remember, this is how you're showing up on every call. This could be maybe your 16th dial, but it may be the most important call this person gets this entire week. So make sure you're showing up okay. So yeah, there's a lot of layers of analysis that happen. And of course, the prompting will on occasion reveal a glitch, but this is why AI is important to stand in for our prospects. I'm not interested in a product that's perfectly human. I'm interested in one that helps us humans do what we do better. And that's its purpose.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about access for what's it cost? How much time a week should people work? Can individuals do it, or is it just a company thing? Can you talk to me about some of that?
Yeah. So in January, we will launch the broader, more public facing version of the studio. And that will be available as an e-commerce transaction for an individual, and they can go on a month-to-month basis, and that's not a problem. Typically, an individual within a team is going to be $200 a month, but for a team, it's like $250. So we were encouraging a location to subscribe, and then you can have your executive director, you can have your concierge, you can have your sales counselor, or you can have a department head. So buy the property is $250 a month, and larger portfolios, of course, it goes down pretty dramatically. If you have a larger portfolio, that cost can get down as low as $50 a month per location, and that's for an entire team at a location.
Wow.
So yeah, it gets it really gets to helping everybody get better.
So I've got a question for it. This is sort of personal to me. I have a good friend of mine who's been working in the sales world in a technology space, so completely out of senior living.
Yeah.
And he got terminated yesterday.
I'm so sorry.
And he's got a long runway, so he's got some months to work on. But when he told me that, I said, "Oh, man, you ought to go do senior living." And so as we were sitting here talking, and I was thinking about this, I was thinking, he ought to go buy this and teach himself how to sell senior living as he's looking for a job, so that when he finally lands a job, and I mean, in our area, I just did a quick search on Google last night. There are like 20 sales jobs available. So there's lots of stuff out there. And I would think that if somebody went out and did that, they could really put themselves in a good position, go to work. And I would think that if I were a hiring manager, I knew they'd gone through this process, that would give them a real advantage in consideration. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting approach. We do view this as both an onboarding and a tuning tool for existing employees. I'm not positioning it as a pre-hire screening tool. However, if you show up saying, "Hey, I can show you my recorded results on the major types of conversations that happen in a senior living setting. I can show you the transcripts, I can give you the recordings, and I can show you the scores." And that would be a very interesting way of approaching one of those jobs. Yeah, I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
My concern on pre-hire screening is it is AI, which inherently is difficult to prove is without bias. So if I have employees that are talking to a system that is showing some horsiness, well, yeah, our prospects do that too. They say all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
If it's a pre-hire conversation, I'm a lot less comfortable. I'd rather make sure that we're supporting people on their own merits.
You bet. Well, I guess I'm thinking more for him specifically. I'm actually thinking more it might help him get comfortable with the business sector and the language, so that if he goes into an interview, he'll understand the unique parts of sales of senior living and some of the language and those kinds of things. So
yeah, even just reviewing the playbook. Within our system, we have content that is designed to explain and demonstrate the different kinds of conversations you're about to have in the practice setting. And that explanation of here's why it's a big deal, here's why it's important, here's where some people tend to mess up. That could be incredibly helpful for somebody. Yes, I would recommend it.
Yeah. No, it is really, really cool. So if somebody wanted to learn more, talk to me about how they get in touch, what they should do.
Yeah, so my contact information, I believe, is available. My LinkedIn profile is right here on screen. That's an easy way to get to me on social media. If you're welcome to invite me to connect, or you can choose to follow. I'm also available at J Greaves, Greav as in Victor ES, at nextstepsalesmanagement.com. So that's my email address. And I'd be delighted to talk to anybody who's interested.
Yeah, from my perspective, I look at this and I think this ought to be part of every sales organization, this training platform, It makes it easier for salespeople to practice. I'm thinking, I don't know whether you, and I know you're still early on this, but I would think you could do some really, in larger organizations, you could do some really fun gamification and have team members, if you will, play against each other for high scores. Would that work?
Yeah, there's a leaderboard, and there are also learning paths. And so you can go through and do instructional work. You can take a test. You can show your proficiency on the theory side. And I just want to make it clear, if you are not using the Next Step sales management system, whether it's your lead scoring or your forecasting, that is completely fine. We have multiple portfolios who are using the studio now who do not use our forecasting system and our language in their CRM. Julie Podowitz with Grow Your Occupancy, she is also a collaborator on a project like this. And I'm delighted for portfolios that have been trained with her. Her playbook, her methodology is built into their studio. So yeah, I just want to shout out Julie because she's been a great partner on this project.
That is really cool. To me, this is an ideal use case for AI. It's a way to make humans better at the things that humans do. And so it's ideal. I know that it is great today, and it's learning every day, right? So every day that goes on, it gets better and better and smarter and smarter. And you might say, well, then maybe I should wait. Well, you shouldn't wait, because how many prospects are you practicing on that are live prospects that you should be practicing on with the practice studio?
I agree.
So, John, thank you very much. Amazing conversation, amazing use of technology. This is a perfect example of technology making humanity better. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today. Reach out to John to get more information on this terrific tool.
Thanks, Steve.